Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Arlington Finance Committee to order. First order of business is the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Lambaste anybody who didn't review them, except for the minor fact that I forgot to myself.
What happens if you review them but you can't remember?
No, that's even worse, Charlie. I didn't need that.
It doesn't get better either.
Okay. In that case, well, any comments? No corrections. I'm holding out on myself. I'm going to looking for it and give Peter any comments I see or any corrections tomorrow. But just to close this off, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as
Moved.
Second? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. Now, we have a new second draft of the warrant, and it's actually, you can change this on your own because it's very simple. They've eliminated one of the articles. So the, oh, wait a minute, 17. Here it is. Article 72 on the Special Education Stabilization Fund has been eliminated. So now there are 79 articles instead of 80. So eliminate Article 72, Appropriation Special Education Reserve Fund, and then just renumber the rest of it. Marie Kapelka said there's no change in the wording or anything like that. So we'll not kill any more trees. Now on the calendar, very quickly, on Monday we've eliminated the Harry Barber, so water bodies will be coming in at 7:45. So that usually takes a little while, so we'll have that. There will be only one meeting of the Finance Committee, possibly in April. So there will be no meetings in April except for a possible meeting on April 10th. That's April 10th. That's the day we get the House Ways and Means Committee report. If Alan and I, with your approval, later on get the ability to make minor adjustments. We won't need a meeting, I should be able to tell you by early afternoon. After that, the next Monday is Patriots Day. Town meeting starts on the 21st. The Finance Committee will meet at 7:30 at the Lions Room on the second floor of the Town Hall before each of the town meetings. So those will be the only meetings at that point. Okay, the hearing today is on the CPA project, Community Preservation Act. Everybody should have a handout that goes through the various projects. And for those of you who brought their computers, Liz forwarded to you the more detailed handout, well, not a handout, but the more detailed presentation on that. So with that, if you could introduce yourself to the committee, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Al. Eric Helmuth, I'm the chair of the CPA committee, and with me I have Assistant Town Manager Jim Feeney, who assists our committee in a terrific capacity, and Leslie Mayer, who is the Park and Recreation Commission designee to the committee. So thank you for inviting us. I think by now most of you have heard this spiel enough times that I don't need to go into great detail, but for those of you who are new, the CPA committee is one of the committees that by law or by bylaw reports directly to town meeting with our recommendations, other ones being yourself and the ARB and the select board. And we're kind of an odd duck in that this, I think, is the only appropriation that the main motion, the recommended vote, has to come, it doesn't come from FinCom, but comes from the CPA committee, and that's just a function of the state law. However, we eagerly consult and collaborate with other bodies in the town. We visited the Capital Planning Committee last week, and we're pleased to have their affirmation of our recommendations. And we're here tonight to consult with you, to solicit your input and questions, and I hope to ask for a vote of support of our intentions to recommend the funding for the CPA projects to town meeting. So with that, I'll point you to your handout, and it might encourage you to actually rip off the last page, which is the budget sheet, as we go through the projects, because it will require, a couple of the budget items require some recommendations. So our process starts in the early fall, where we start 2 rounds of CPA project applications. They can be from town departments, or they can be from outside entities. We had a mix of both, and we ended up, I think, in the end with all town departments and town entities this year. So we go through several months of due diligence and screening, and we have our own public hearings for presentations. And the result of that is where we are tonight. Now we are visiting you. We're seeing the select board on Monday night for the consultations. After that point, when we reconvene in March and we have finalized some finalized financial figures, then we'll take our final votes that we'll recommend at town meeting. So that's kind of how the process goes, and the consultation here is by design to give this an opportunity for a real consultation. So I'll give you kind of the overview of the budget, and I'll explain a couple points that aren't easily explained alone on paper. And I'll direct your attention to the first project line, Whittemore Park Revitalization, and then also to project number 6, the North Union Playground. Those budget amounts are not finalized. And the reason for that is that we are waiting to find out if CDBG funds will be committed to contribute to the North Union Playground work. And we believe that they will. That's the expectation, but we don't yet know if they will. We'll know that in mid-March? Mid-March. If they are, that will offset the amount of money that this project needs from CPA funds, and that would allow us to give more money to Whittemore Park. So there's kind of a 3-way thing going on. So if CDBG commits funds to North Union, that'll free up our ability to fully fund the Whittemore Park Revitalization Phase 1 project. You'll notice that at our bottom line is right now a negative balance of $125,416. We obviously won't go to town meeting because we can't with a deficit. What that reflects is if CDBG doesn't give any money to North Union, our intention is to fully fund North Union, but to reduce the Whittemore Park Revitalization appropriation to the degree necessary to erase the funding deficit. And the reason for that is need, and also that the planning department has worked with us to come up with a scaled proposal, so they can scale the project down if they need to. They would like to have the full amount so they can do more. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions on that little bit of 3-way fiscal math. Great.
And you still have $25,416 left over
Yes.
as a deficit. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we'd have to take more. You know, we don't know how much we're going to get from CDBG. We could get enough to if we get more than 100K, then we'd be able to wipe that out. So we will find out. So I think
will reduce the.
it'll allow us to fully fund all of them, and then we wouldn't have a deficit.
Okay.
So I think that, and capital planning had to do this, that if you do vote to support our recommendations, it would have to be with the understanding of our intention with respect to this, budget variability that under the conditions I just described.
I don't understand what you want the finance committee to do.
Each year, I mean, it's up to you, but each year we have asked for and welcomed a vote of support for our recommendations to town meeting. I think that helps us send a clear message to town meeting that we've, that we have support of
Yeah.
the town's smarts.
I think in the past, we basically said the Finance Committee supports the recommendation of the Community Preservation Act, and that's,
So in this case, we don't have a recommendation. We have a negative number.
if you want, if the committee wants them to come back afterwards,
Yeah.
that would be fine, if we have time or space.
Yeah, I think
When do you expect it?
We're meeting. We're taking our final votes on the March 28th. Yeah. Charlie, do you have a thought as to kind of how your committee thought of that endorsement? Given that we don't have our bottom line yet with the potential deficit.
You said you weren't gonna, put in a negative recommendation at town meeting, so
Right.
I supported it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what we're asking is if you support our stated intention tonight, on the record that we would present a balanced budget and we would reduce the top line project as needed, depending on how much comes in on the other project.
Wait, so just to be clear, what you're saying is, you don't have the CDBG funding.
Yep.
You're gonna reduce the Whittemore line from 544.29 to like
That amount minus,
415 and change.
right, exactly right.
We could endorse a total.
So we were just gonna do, we could just endorse the 415.
Mhm.
You get the additional money, we endorse that as well, the ATM. Okay.
Second that.
There we go.
Absolutely, yeah. Great. Do you want me to go through the projects?
Yes, please.
I will do. All right, so I'll take these in order for both your handout and the spreadsheet. The Whittemore Park revitalization, this is the first build phase. The CPA dollars funded a comprehensive study and concept plan in the last fiscal year, and there were a variety of public meetings and public input, and there's a beautiful design. The planning department's made that available. It's on the website, and we'll publish it as well. The project was divided up into 3 planning phases for 3 years. This is the first year in the first phase, and this addresses the space in front of the house. So it involves extensive rethinking of the walkway, putting a circular walkway around the edge instead of through, keeping the railroad tracks for a lot of reasons, but augmenting those with places to sit, adding seating throughout the park, opening it up to light. There are some problems with dying trees and invasive trees, and frankly too many trees for the health of the trees. So the planning department has solicited a tree expert's opinion as well as the tree warden's support for thinning the trees so that the remaining trees can be healthy and open up some light and some air while not removing the tree canopy. And see, well, we have the benefit of my colleagues here. Am I missing anything major on these?
I think the only thing to add that the later phases of the project address different elements. So there'll be a later phase, I believe phase 2, that would pursue CDBG funding that includes ADA accessibility to the building and pathway to the museum as well. And then a later, I believe, 3rd phase, which may pursue capital funding, would be if you're looking at the structure to the right, the parking lot side, and creating connectivity down to that parking lot, some sort of amphitheater style arrangement.
And in the first phase, there is accessibility. Part of the plan is that the walkways would be made accessible, so that there's accessibility in that first phase as well.
So cost-wise, how much is the first phase of the total project, approximately?
The first phase, I think the 540,000.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry,
represents
okay.
phase 1.
That's about a third.
Yeah.
Go look at the sheets.
Yeah. Oh, I should also clarify something that came up in our own public process when we had a public hearing about this. That people wanted to know, well, who signs off on the design? Because the plan right now is a conceptual plan. This funding would be for finalizing design to the point of construction documents. And we actually asked that question, and the answer is the select board in consultation with the historic commission, not the CPA committee. We're not a body that approves park designs. we recommend funding based on appropriate CPA use of the funds. And, you know, we do due diligence to make sure that it's feasible and fiscally responsible. But, you know, it's not our role, nor do we want to get into whether, you know, whether this bench goes here and do we have a beer garden and all that, I think is above our pay grade, frankly.
And this is a property that's under the jurisdiction of the select board, not
Right.
not a park property.
So, you know, if this money is appropriated, this, nothing would get built until the select board signs off on it, is the bottom line.
Question?
Oh, Peter.
Did you consult or did the Dowell Museum people talk to you at all? Or did you talk to them?
The planning department certainly did, yeah, when they were doing their planning and due diligence.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak directly for them, but I'm almost certain that all occupants of that building
yeah,
are
I believe so.
involved in the designing process.
Which is that's the Historical Society?
No, the
Oh,
Dowell
the
Museum
Dowell
is
Museum.
separate.
Sounds
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah.
That and the Chamber of Commerce reside there.
I'd have to read the planning department's lengthy application to verify that, but my understanding was that all abutters and stakeholders were consulted.
Okay, other questions? Grant?
Phase 2 and Phase 3, is that part of the design? Or do we know what Phase 2 and Phase 3 are?
I think this,
We only know conceptually what those
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna be pursuing CPA funding for those phases,
Right.
so we didn't see any.
right.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the plan is to look at other funding sources, including CDBG, because there are accessibility issues with the later phases that, you know, major focus of those. So yeah, they've told us their intention is this would be phase 1 would be the one that draws for CPA.
okay, so it's not, but do we know what they are? Or conceptually what Phase 2 and Phase 3 are?
In the design, the CPA funded study and conceptual design document, yes, you know, there are conceptual drawings.
The second one being accessibility to the Jefferson Cutter House
Right.
and the Dallin Museum. The third phase being accessible portion from that right side of the Cutter House if you're looking from Mass Ave down to the Russell Common parking lot. Opening that area up and sort of creating like a amphitheater style seating area and connection from the upper park space to that lower parking plaza.
More community
Accessibility
space.
for Phase 2
Yeah,
and 3. Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's 540, where you only have a concept design. So part of the 540 is to do a full plan. And what part of the 540 would that be? And so how much of the 540 is doing stuff and how much of it is, and who is the designer? Was my
The
follow-up question.
designer is Crowley Cottrell.
They did the concept.
They worked through the concept and they were the ones that provided the cost estimates for the additional phases. And I think they're sort of finalizing design, providing bidding support, and construction administration was on the order of maybe $40,000 or
That's about
somewhere
right.
in that neighborhood.
So most of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John?
Did I understand you correctly that the CPA will fund the first phase and then subsequently other sources have to come to bear in order to finish the project?
The planning department's intention, as they expressed to us, was that they would only ask us for phase 1. But just to be clear that nothing would be unfinished, I think phase 1 is a discrete project in and of itself. And phase 2 and 3, you know, it won't look undone. It's just that that's the part that's in front of the house. Future phases would address the space on the other sides and towards the parking lot.
It seems to me that there ought to be some assurance that it will not be the instance that only phase 1 gets done. I'm not sure. Is there enough connectivity, if you like, between the entities to be sure that?
I mean, to be honest, I think it's, yeah. I don't know, is it in the
Yeah.
capital plan? I'm trying to think if it is.
Uh,
I mean, no, it's.
Yeah, I'm not certain
Yeah.
at this point, but I
Yeah.
think, to your point, that front park area, currently stands alone, and it will be
Yeah.
treated sort of in its own entity.
Yeah.
And the other, sort of accessibility phases would be improvements, but
Yeah.
what's done in the front wouldn't detract or change anything that currently
Because
exists.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that an appropriate approach might be to be sure that what you just said is true. That is to say, there are modules.
Mhm.
The phase 1 is something that can be done, and then 2 and 3 are more or less independent of that.
Yeah.
So they could or could not be done depending upon the availability of funding. But it seems to me that maybe it is true that you are doing the planning this way, but to make them sort of self-contained
Mhm.
and to assure that if something is started, it does get done. It would be truly
Mm.
sad, I think, if CPA started something,
Oh, yeah.
spent money on it, and then it didn't go anywhere after that. It would seem to me that if that were to happen for whatever reason, that CPA ought to finish it then.
Well, I agree, and we're very confident that phase 1 is discrete and standalone as a project, and that there are sufficient funds to do this. And we also have some safety measures that, part of this is the design gets done first, and construction money isn't released until everyone is satisfied that there is money enough to do it. So, because I think we have no interest, and we in the committee has a good track record for past projects of performing enough due diligence and project oversight to monitor those and not release funds until they're ready to go.
Okay.
So we've been fortunate so
So you
far.
do have that in mind, that,
Very much so.
okay.
That was one of the major discussions of the committee, that there
Yeah.
needed to be a point where the sign-off on the complete design was done by the entity, the select board,
Yeah.
along with any other entity. There's, when they presented to us, there was a paragraph that described all of the entities involved in the decision-making around the park. And so the committee wanted to be sure that those entities signed off on the final design before any construction money could be released to the project.
Yeah.
For just that reason, you want to make sure that they have enough money to complete,
Yeah.
in a very visible location
Yeah.
of town,
Mhm.
complete a project, not have it look like it's
Okay.
partially done.
Question?
Peter?
Are you aware that I'm sure you are, that the garden at the right end of the house, and looking at it from Mass Avenue, is a shambles?
Yes.
Why is that not included, or is it now included?
That's
in the
in,
plan?
yeah, that's, I'm sorry, John, that is either phase 2 or 3 in a future phase.
I'm not certain exactly
You're not sure it is?
where they propose to do it.
It's I know that the whole property is addressed in the 3-phase plan, but
It's
It
not
wa-
part
it
of the
wasn't-
first.
it's not for the first phase, yeah.
It
It
was
wasn't,
definitely not.
it wasn't included in the public review.
Yeah, I don't, then beyond that, I don't know, other than, I think that would be, a good conversation to have when the select board reviews the final plans. Yeah.
They did not propose it in their grant application to CPA.
Right.
Charlie?
So, this actually occurred since your meeting before the capital planning committee, but somebody in my family was mentioning concern over some trees in the park.
Mhm.
Have any comments on that?
I think we had someone from the public attend our hearing and express that as well. I think that the planning department's response was the town's tree warden and the arborist that they hired, supported the removal of the dead trees and the sick trees and a couple of trees that were invasive species that were also crowding the healthiest trees. That it's just too densely planted for any trees to be healthy in the professional's view.
And there are some that need to come down
Yeah.
regardless
Right.
of whether this project were to go forward
That's right.
or not.
Yeah. They're
According
already
to the
marked
tree
for
warden.
deletion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My understanding is the town manager's intention is to hold a tree hearing for any healthy tree that needs to come down as part of that project. So the tree warden has authority to remove a sick tree or a dangerous tree, but a healthy tree, there'll be a tree hearing, and then there'll be an objection from the public, likely. And then the board of selectmen will have to decide
Right.
whether the plans need to be changed
That's exactly
or
right.
whether the tree can be removed.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we made sure to find that the locus of that decision is not us. You know, but it's the select board.
Sort of like managing the dog from town has to go to the board of selectmen.
That's right. Although I don't think anyone's ever been bitten by a tree.
Other questions? Okay, so my understanding, looking at a picture here,
I
is
have
that
one more, Al.
is that the focus, I'm sorry?
I have one more question.
Okay, Peter?
Sorry to be a pain in the neck, but,
You do it very well, Peter.
is the railroad track gonna be moved sideways? Gonna be left right where it is?
Their proposal had it left where it was.
Exactly.
Good.
Okay. So, the focus of this phase one will be in the front between the house and Mass Ave.
Yes.
And it looks like from a picture, the railings all around it will be removed. And then phase two and three will focus on the sides and the
Sides and
rear.
Mhm.
Okay. And is the CPA committee committed to finishing this project even if they have to use their own money
For phase one or for all phases?
for all phases?
No.
To be frank, I'm not sure if phase 3 would even qualify for,
Yeah.
would be eligible for using CPA
Yeah.
funding.
I mean, they can certainly apply in
Yeah.
subsequent years, but we can't predetermine that we're gonna
Right.
fund something that nobody's applied for.
Right. And I think that, you know, we really are looking at phase one. It's called phase one, but we're looking at this as a standalone project because the way it's been presented to us is that it is discrete. And, you know, it's not, if done, it's not that the project is interrupted in the middle of phase two. And I look at them as a menu of things that they can be done, frankly. And that's how they develop the plan.
Charlie?
Yeah, not to be obstreperous, but I'm working on your theory, Peter. But I think it's unfair to ask the CPA committee to commit future committees because they have to have their
Yep.
independent vote, number one. And number two, there's a long tradition in the town, in the capital planning department, of doing capital projects in phases. Not the least of which are your sidewalks and highways that
Yep.
get done over a phase. So it's nothing unusual.
Yep. Okay, good point. Any other questions on on the Whittemore Parks revitalization? Okay, on to two.
And now for something completely different and a lot less money. If you go down Mass Ave and look up at Water Street, you'll see a really, really ugly sign, and that's what I did last year. And I was curious because it looked like it was about Captain Cook's Mill, pointing down to Mill Brook. And upon further investigation, we found that there are two signs in Arlington that are part of over 300 such signs that were installed in 1930. And the signs themselves are historic artifacts because of that. And it's a very interesting snapshot of what people in the Commonwealth thought was historically important at the time, but the signs also point to historic relevance of the town. The other sign that Arlington has is at the Jason Russell House. Both signs are in significant need of repair. The one that I mentioned is in particularly terrible condition. But we learned that the restoration of the signs is CPA eligible, that the town of Situate used CPA funds to do a beautiful restoration of their signs. And from that, and from them, we were able to get budgeting estimates for that. And so the town manager's office has agreed to take on the project if town meeting decides to fund it. They'll be beautiful and colorful again, and it'll draw public's attention not only to Jason Russell House, but to the history of Millbrook and the mills that were along that and how the role that they played in Arlington's history.
Okay, questions, Alan?
What's interesting, there's sort of a metaphysical issue with the one next to the Jason Russell house, because it in itself is historically inaccurate. So we're restoring a sign that's historically inaccurate to preserve the history of the inaccuracy. Just-
Yeah.
It is very meta.
There is Plymouth Rock.
Welcome to history.
Okay, Grant?
Yeah.
Isn't there one, it may not be a tercenary, at the foot of the rocks?
It's not one of the tercentenaries.
So they're not making these, they don't make them anymore, right?
No, this is a one-shot deal in 1930. It was a big statewide project to commemorate history.
Actually, they do. The original manufacturer still has the mold and can make brand new ones.
That's pretty great. Oh yeah, I mean the shape of the sign is common. It's just that these have the specific dates of the tercentenary printed on them. Yeah.
Okay, Christine?
Do we have a?
So the way the project would work, would use probably in-house DPW staff to remove the markers themselves from the poles, and then we would transport the markers to a restoration studio. So it'd be a private third party that would refurbish them, and then when they were ready, we'd pick them back up and install them back in the poles.
David?
I'm going to talk about the one on Water Street. The problem with the one on Water Street is it's located too close to the street. Therefore, big trucks, whether it be tractor trailers, dump trucks, they whack the top of it all the time, and you'll see it spinning because it spins. So maybe in doing that particular sign over there, I think of moving
Realignment.
a little away from the curb, because over the years it just get whacked.
That's good feedback.
That's excellent to know.
Okay. Other questions? Are the signs structurally sound?
The poles all appear to be in good condition.
Yeah.
I mean, the markers themselves weigh in excess of 200 pounds, and they're all still standing.
Built to last,
Built to last. They will outlast
but
us.
the weather has
Yeah.
done it.
The paint, on the other hand, not so much.
There's a document online that lists
Yes.
all of them.
Yeah.
And the first thing it says is all markers are made of cast iron. So
Yeah.
those things are light.
It's extraordinary. Yeah.
That's why they weigh 200 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Grant mentioned the foot of the rocks, which is, embedded in a big stone.
Mhm.
And so probably the largest battle on that date took place at the foot of the rocks. And it has very little to show for itself. So, for future.
Yeah, really.
Too busy with Uncle Sam.
Okay, any other questions on the marker restoration? Okay,
Okay.
old burying ground.
Old burying ground. So this is between Pleasant Street and basically the library, Whittemore Robbins complex. It's not an active cemetery, but it is a historic asset of the town, and it has some significant structural issues, particularly with the retaining wall and some of the structure of some of the tombs. And frankly, the town has known for some time that we have to do something about that, particularly with the walls sections that are at risk from falling down. They're taped off now. So the CPA funded a study in a prior year to study it, figure out what needed to be done, and develop a phased plan. Again, because it's just too much to bite off at one time, more money than we have in 1 year. To take care of the most urgent needs first, as are detailed in the paper. But the focus is certainly the perimeter wall is the first priority, to stabilize that. And the wall itself is part of some of the mound tombs, so the structural problems in those tombs will be addressed with the wall. And Jim was deeply involved in the study and can answer any questions you have. He took us through a very chilly tour of the old burying ground. It was fascinating and cold.
So this is just going to focus on this particular, the boundary wall winding up against the Whittemore Robbins house.
Yes, starting from where we abut the Verizon property down to the entrance. And then the second phase would pick up on the other side of the entrance using that natural break, take it down to the corner where the church is, and then start to make that turn.
and go around the,
And then work our way back towards Pleasant Street, where it's not in need of such significant repair.
questions? Grant?
I was curious, is the bulk of the cost restoring the walls?
Yes.
I mean, like 80, 90?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably, what I would say is, I think approximately $60,000 of that cost is going to be to hire the structural design firm to draw up all the plans, do construction documents, but they're gonna be doing the documents for every phase of work up front instead of hiring a new designer each time. So that the bulk of it, again, is gonna be to actually implement construction.
Thank you.
Apologize. Questions, additional? Now, over towards the Pleasant Street side, I don't know if they're still there, but a whole bunch of the top pieces have just fallen over.
We repaired them this summer.
Okay.
Another one came down, and at that point, we mobilized a repair crew to get up there and replace them.
Okay, so they're all solidly set,
Yeah.
so they're not gonna fall on anybody?
On the entrance to the preschool area.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. Okay, additional questions on the cemetery wall? Okay,
All right. So now we have the Whittemore Robbins Cottage. So this is the building that is across from the Whittemore Robbins Carriage House, just by a few feet, which with our first year of CPA dollars, we restored and preserved the carriage house from falling down. And did a beautiful restoration that led by our own Jim Feeney. And now we want to, the town has asked us to do a similar preservation to preserve the exterior of the Whittemore Robbins Cottage, which is now vacant but has had a tenant in the past. The interior will be done through the capital budget process and is in the pipeline. There are plans for use of that, which includes some revenue generating use, as detailed in our paper here. But this, as we did with the carriage house, this will address the most urgent concerns to seal the envelope of the house and prevent any more weathering damage and other damage to the building, so that the town maintains that asset for its future use. And they've asked for $154,000 from CPA.
okay, so this will basically just be an exterior work,
Yep.
roof, siding,
Roof, windows.
Clapboard side,
Foundation.
maybe some chimney work, but gutters.
Yep.
Yep.
Questions? Okay, so the carriage house is finished?
That's done. Yeah, I did a side by side with
Yeah.
some neighbor and.
That too will see some interior renovations in the future, just not under the guise of CPA.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay, so
Arlington Reservoir.
Yeah, so now we're moving into the open space and recreational land category, because CPA, as you know, has 3: historic preservation, this one, and housing. So we are in phase 2 of a project that has thus far been supported extensively and almost entirely by CPA. The master plan 2 years ago, $100,000 or so, was funded by the CPA and produced a very successful analysis of the needs and opportunities and the public input. Phase 1 was funded by CPA last year and is renovating and replacing the pump house and
Doing a trial of
Yes.
the
trail,
pathway.
the trail pathway. Yeah, doing a trial section of that, and that's underway. Phase 2 then addresses some substantial improvements to the perimeter and to the trail, and as well as what's on your paper: bathhouse, parking lot, and fence improvements. As always, I think there's a great consciousness of the beach area, both because it's in demand and used by the public, and also produces revenue for the town. And this has been a really eye-opening experience for me, because up until we started working with the reservoir, I never walked the thing, and it's actually a beautiful nature trail around the perimeter. and it is used a lot more than we knew, than I knew. And you walk that, and you have to watch where you're going, because there are obstacles and tree roots and all kinds of issues in the way, and invasive plants all around it. So the study produced a great documentation about the need for that and plans to ameliorate that, those things. And at the conclusion of this phase, I think we'll have a much more walkable perimeter that'll be even more enjoyable and, more importantly, more accessible to people. And we've got Leslie here from the Park and Recreation Commission that can answer detailed questions you may have.
Grant?
Probably not included here. He's probably found other ways of addressing it, but technical as we've become, the best way to get rid of the goose poop is to have the lifeguards every morning go and pick it up. I believe that is how it's done. And they put this, scarecrow coyote there that the geese kind of lean up against and everything. They're not very, very scared of it anymore. Anything about that to be addressed?
There have been a multitude of different solutions proposed and implemented. We've had goose egg addling. We have had dogs come out and do it. We've had before the beach opens each morning, staff go out and clean it up. We've had staff chasing the geese away. We've put up goose fencing. We've tried
So nothing works.
only to a limited degree until those geese figure out what we're doing, and then they figure out a way around it. So we'll continue to operationally, there, as you said, there's nothing in this plan that is the golden goose to get rid of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Season not allowed.
What's that?
Hunting season not allowed.
I think that would be up to the select board.
Okay. I'll speak to my former colleague.
Additional questions, Dean?
So on the total project cost of $4.5 million, last time we talked about this a year ago, there was going to be a CPA funding element, and then there was going to be a capital planning committee funding element. They put in their plan last year to be 2020. Not holding people to exact years, but is that still conceptually how this is going to work, that there'll be a CPA funding element and a capital planning committee funding to the project?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the plan.
And also, we intend to pursue any opportunities we can for grants, for grant funding from state, federal, wherever we can get the money, beg, borrow, steal it. No, not steal it.
I was gonna say, read
No.
it.
Don't get caught.
No, but yeah, the intention is that CPA is going to, the request for CPA was to, for the phase 2 portion of the project, to complete all of the design and engineering work for the entire phase 2, and then start the demolition work that's going to be necessary for, and that's the $500,000. And then the rest of it would be, there's probably a little bit of value engineering that we're going to be able to do as we go forward and finalize the design. But the majority would be looking at capital. It is in the capital plan, and we will be requesting grants.
Could you refresh my memory? How much was involved in phase 1? What was the dollar figure?
$991,000
off the top of our heads.
And the bids are coming in tomorrow.
Okay. Other questions? How many phases do you expect?
This would be this is it. This is the second phase. That's what we'd expect.
Oh,
The total project cost, $4.5 million?
Correct.
so that'll have to come from other sources.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Yes.
Yeah, they just asked us for the 500,000 to do the scope that Leslie said, that kicks it off, basically.
And
Yeah.
then the rest is
Right.
is capital, we're looking at capital and
Grants.
any grants we
Yeah.
can come up with.
Yeah, we coordinate on this one and, well, all possible projects, but especially the res, we've coordinated very closely with the capital planning committee throughout the lifespan of this project so that we can have a coherent, that happens throughout the year. We have a official liaison with the committee, and we stay in very close contact as to what CPA applications are coming in, what our budget looks like, so that we can mutually slot things in as best we can for this project particularly.
Okay, any other, Peter?
So you said initially that your part of the grant, your part of the project in phase 2 will be the perimeter trail and the boathouse, bathhouse, I mean. And
Phase
there's
one is the pump house and a section of the trail, a pilot
Yeah.
section of the trail for that's phase 1, and CPA covered phase 1.
But you're asking, it's unclear to me what CPA is going to do out of this description in the paper before us.
Complete the design and construction documents for the entire rest of the project for phase 2, and demolition work.
So there'll be an additional budget need to complete the work, so to continue phase 2, to finish phase 2.
From
but
other
from
that's
other
where
sources,
it's coming
right.
from other sources.
Right.
The construction would be coming from other sources.
It's very common for projects to have multiple funding sources, CPA just being one of them. Sometimes that opens up the opportunity to get grants from other grants because of the leverage funding that CPA is the local match, which we'll discuss when we get to Winslow Towers.
So are you intending then to go to town meeting with a project that says it's CPA funded but really isn't?
Many of our projects are partly funded by CPA. Very few, well, not very few, but it's very common for projects to have CPA funding as a part of their total budget.
We're anticipating that phase 2 of the reservoir project will be partially funded by CPA and finished with additional funding from other sources.
So I guess the answer to my question is yes.
Yeah.
You're going to say it's a CPA project, but you're not going to fund the whole thing.
Well, it's a recommendation to appropriate CPA money for these components of the project.
But you haven't specified the components. Well,
Well-
Leslie just did, but
Yeah.
it's not here.
Yeah, no, and I've taken that note actually to make sure that that's details in. 'Cause that's
It
important.
was presented that way.
Yeah, and that's what the application says, and that's what's on record. But yeah.
Might be more accurate to say it's a town project,
Oh.
partially funded by CPA.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times demolition. What's that involve?
Well, it's gonna require a lot of the, fencing coming down. The second phase of the project is gonna be doing the bathhouse. Phase 1 is the pump house, and phase 2 is gonna include the bathhouse. So, there's gonna be demolition work that needs to be done to, before everything can be brought back up.
So
And
you-
that's gonna be based on what we see the final design and construction documents.
So do you anticipate that the present house will be demolished and a new one put in?
Not necessarily, we expect it, like the pump house, to be essentially, internal demolition, but that the structure itself
Okay.
will remain.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, onward.
Great. So moving on to Project 6, the North Union Playground. This is a playground across from the Thompson School, but it is a Recreation Department land. It is one of the most highly used playgrounds in town. Has a popular spray pool, I believe, but also a playground. And it is in dire need of replacement for the playground equipment. The State Representative Garbely has secured $100,000 from the state budget for this project, so we have the opportunity to leverage that and use CPA dollars, and we hope CDBG dollars to get this done. I have to say that in the 4 years we've done CPA, I have never had more community input, attendance at our meetings, people at our hearings, people at our subsequent meetings after the hearings to come there and just ask us to please get this done. And these are parents and people in the community. Yeah, and but you know, I went there and I put my foot through the hole in the surface and I got it. So you know, it is long overdue, and the community I think is very, very excited about this, particularly given the diverse neighborhood that it serves.
The rec department itself, I guess through capital budgets, did Magnolia, Robbins Farm, what are they doing in the next fiscal year? What is there a rec department, other project, another playground that they're doing, redoing?
This year, the priority is North Union.
You're doing like a playground per year?
We're looking at I mean, we need to look, our projects do go through CPA first initially, so the prioritization is going to be based on, you know, what the need is. As far as playgrounds go, this was the one that is the most dire, in most dire need.
Okay, Dean? I'm sorry, John?
So Eric, I didn't quite understand, I understood that you said, for example, with the Whittemore Park, you're not going to approve the plans, the planning department's going to do that, it's going to go to the Board of Selectmen, but then do you give them the funding at the start, or are you reviewing contracts and details as you go through and releasing the funding?
Which project are you referring to?
Both, because
Yeah. Yeah, Jim handles this for us, so you can describe the process.
For any CPA-funded project, the money is only released as invoices are submitted, and they're all paid through the town manager's office.
Great. So that's background to my next comment, which is that with the Whittemore Park and the North Union Street playground, you have a tree planting. And the town unfortunately has a long, not great history with tree planting. The trees are funded by the Capital Planning Committee or the Finance Committee. They go in the ground, but then they rely upon contractor warranties to keep them alive the next year. And the contractor's general rule of thumb is to hope that it rains and never water them, and if the tree dies, hope that the town doesn't notice in time by the warranty period is ended. And so when we had mortality during the first Thompson School project over a number of trees, there was no warranty replacement because the town never followed up. At Thompson, again, trees were planted. I don't believe that they all are healthy from last year, from like they went in last fall, and I don't believe the town has applied for a warranty replacement. So the town has different departments, and each department does a different and approaches tree watering differently. So the DPW has a tree department inside. They're very good at watering the trees. The rec department had a number of problems, poor tree health at the Spy Pond playgrounds. Those trees were not watered appropriately and are stressed. At Magnolia Park, they were, under the last director of Parks and Rec, a lot more active and watering those trees. The school department has consistently failed to water trees. And so I guess that I would encourage, as you are releasing the money, to make sure that the town has a policy in place to follow up on warranties, possibly get 2-year warranties, which I believe the town manager was going to put in the bid documents, but to make sure that if the town is putting money into planting a tree, that the tree survives long enough with the proper watering, and I hope your committee could help make sure that that happens in these programs.
Thank you.
Okay, Dean?
So on the North Union playground, I'm trying to reconcile my understanding of how things work in this town, which is the recreation department has a multi-year, I think they had a 30-year capital plan for parks and things like that, and they were ticking away at them. And if you go back a year ago, priorities were Bishop and Poets in the pipeline, and North Union wasn't there. that I hear here tonight say it was in dire need of repair. So, was there an imminent rapid failure in the last 12 months of that park? Or is there a recreation department capital plan that's not up to date? I mean, it's gotta be one or the other. It can't just be, the plan's up to date and there was no rapid failure. Something has to have happened. So how did North Union come out of nowhere?
Well,
Or you got yelled at by parents and felt like you needed to cave, which could be it, which is fine. Just tell us.
And state money became available that was dedicated to that particular project.
The planning that's done for a multi-year capital plan is based on a lot of factors, some of which deals with locations. Where have we done work in the past? We want to spread the work out throughout the town. We're responsible for parks, playgrounds, playing fields, as well as the playgrounds. So it's trying to, and courts. So we try to balance the priorities in the plan. And as we look through the plan, we try to go to, if we haven't done a playground in the past year or two, what playground haven't we done work on the furthest out? But there are some playgrounds that don't fall in line, and this is one of those playgrounds. Our sense in doing the planning was that the Thompson School had been redone and a new playground was put in by the school. And work had been done down in North Union. We had done the spray park, and there had been safety surfacing put into the playground not all that long ago. But as we discovered through the parents coming to us, the playground that resides on the park side of the school park divide was being used just as much, if not more so, than the school playground. So we hadn't anticipated needing to make repairs at a playground that had a new school playground put in. But as it was brought to our attention that this playground was in horrible shape, we went and confirmed that, and it became a priority. So it's not that we don't plan, but sometimes circumstances require reprioritization, and this was one of those. And we also, we were able to, and the state rep was able to get some funding to assist in moving the project forward.
So the rec department capital plan, the takeaway is not an absolute document.
It is not an absolute document. No.
Okay.
Okay,
It had been up until this year. They haven't initiated.
somebody on this side? Okay, Charlie?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the subject of watering trees. Jim, I don't know how the town treats that, but I think the discussion was somewhat informative, and also reminded me that the Finance Committee had a long-term, multi-year arm wrestling match with the town about 5 or 8 years ago over field maintenance. And I think the town eventually went outside to get some firms to do I don't know the right horticultural or whatever maintenance of playing fields.
Aeration. And
Yeah.
So we have a turf specialist for the grass surfaces.
Yes. So, why don't we think about doing something like that with the trees?
That's a potential consideration. But to John's point about the watering itself and building that more robustly and more uniformly into the contract documents, I do believe, as you referenced, the manager in consultation with the select board had come to some sort of agreement on what that would look like, and we can make sure that we, at least for CPA projects that come through our pipeline, make sure they know that's a condition of our funding, to ensure that their contract docs build that warranty period in.
Yeah, we can do.
Yeah,
We can
but I'm specifically talking about outside of the installation,
Yeah.
the longer term. I mean, young trees, even if they last through the 2-year warranty, they don't necessarily last for the first 5 years, depending upon their location, groundwater, all sorts of other parameters, so.
Yeah, I don't have the specifics with me right now, so I'd hate to speak incorrectly about that, but I believe the Director of Public Works this past summer, now that we had the tree warden go full-time, we're able to more comprehensively monitor all of our new plantings, and we were able to deploy a couple additional watering crews this summer as well, including putting a watering device in the back of the tree warden's vehicle so that when he would be going out to inspect a lot of the new trees, he would be able to water as necessary.
That was just for DPW trees.
Street trees.
And I'm interested when we do the DPW budget to hear these numbers, because the way the watering worked was they gave tree department staff overtime hours to do tree watering, and they built a second watering rig. But they didn't feel they had the capacity to do any trees other than the public street trees. So I organized volunteers at Thompson School, at the tennis courts. The rec department did watering with summer staff at Magnolia, but the DPW and the tree department didn't feel they had the bandwidth or staff to do all of the trees that the school department plants, the planning department plants. So that would certainly be an area that could find increased efficiency, and as you mentioned, 2 years isn't really enough. Cambridge waters their trees for 5 years. So funding for the DPW to be able to fund, to be able to water, all of the town's newly planted trees, something I think that makes sense.
I know we tried to make sure that the trees have watering bags when they get planted.
And I think to the rec department's credit, on most of their projects, usually one of the things that will end up getting cut is the irrigation system if budgets come in high. But Magnolia Park, Robbins Farm Park, and as we just did with the Town Hall Garden project, we made sure that element was but not to be cut, so that we had a guaranteed watering mechanism moving forward.
Christine?
We have a very thoughtful capital planning process, a long-term capital planning process where projects are put in the pipeline thoughtfully. You know ahead from one year to the next where a project is coming up. The rec department seems to have something similar to that. The CPA, do you have that? Today, here's what you're proposing for this year. Do you have a sense of what's coming in the pipeline next year and the year after, so that there's some coordination, some thoughtfulness in the monies being spent?
We do. We kind of track the capital plan's 4 to 5 year outlook and most of that is populated by items that the capital plan committee is aware of that would be CPA eligible, that would be an opportunity for us to support, whether they be recreation or town properties that are eligible for historic preservation. So in each of those years, we have a major recreation project slotted in already. And we have an expectation, just based on precedent and on the committee's priorities that we understand to be the committee's priorities, that we'll do a major commitment to affordable housing, community housing every year. We've given $500,000, we've funded $500,000 in that category each year. The particulars, I think our view on this is that, as with capital plan or as with the recreation plan, that emergent needs happen from year to year, and we don't close ourselves off to that. For particularly some of the smaller opportunities and projects that come along, if there's grant money available and someone needs CPA funds for a matching grant fund to get that CPA isn't that much money. It's the most powerful when it leverages funds. So we prioritize those. So I think that we try to strike a balance between having a thoughtful plan, knowing what's coming down the pike, so that we're not surprised. So that when people ask me, I'm thinking of putting this project in next year, what's it look like? And I can tell them it looks like we're really pretty close to saturation in this area, and this is where we think we're going to be. So I think that we can give people the best answer that we can, while still, like with every other town body, having to make the final decision year to year.
I think the one caveat to add to that, Eric,
Please.
would be what's unique with CPA is that, and you may have recalled last year we had 3 or 4 projects that were brought forward by applicants outside of the town.
Right.
So when because it's a grant application cycle, so there are inherently some variables each year where we can't plan for it because it's not Public Works or the Rec Department or the Planning Department. It's
Right.
just some sort of outside entity that's proposing this year to do a open space project or historic preservation project, or mainly, when are you going to get a community housing grant application for some large sum of money
Right.
based from some private applicant.
And based on their cycle, yeah. I would add a caveat to his caveat, which is just that even then, when possible, we ask private applicants for phase plans. If we're funding a study, and we've done this with the Jason Russell House, particularly, CPA produced a really comprehensive plan for a multi-year project to continue to preserve that, and we have cost estimates so that we have a pretty good idea of when they may need to come back to us for future phases, even for that. So every study that we fund, we ask for that, for that very reason, so that we have an idea if this is going to come back. If they're going to come back to CPA for some of the work, we'd like to have at least some warning of that, so we can plan.
Do you have your 5-year plan sort of laid out so that maybe next year you could present that to us? I think that would be very helpful.
I think the only items that we would have in there are some of the historic preservation projects and park and recreation
Park and
projects
recreation, yeah.
that are currently programmed into the capital
Right.
plan. That
Yeah.
the capital plan sort of,
Yeah.
if they think it's suitable for CPA, they sort of
Start with
they have a wish list for us. Yeah.
put it in that category
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes we can meet those needs, sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as Jim said, that I'd be happy to do that. I think that that's something that we instituted this past year with the committee so that we can be looking at it. But as Jim said, I think that the committee also wants to maintain some openness to new projects and opportunities we didn't know about, particularly that aren't coming from town departments.
Any other questions, John?
Well, it strikes me that this issue of the trees that you brought up can be thought of in some sense as a facility, which is to say you have to worry about the warranty and you have to worry about the maintenance, which is one of the important reasons that we created the facilities department was created in the first place. So I'm wondering if the responsibility for some of that kind of thing to try to maintain the trees might fall or be appropriately the responsibility of the facilities department. I'm
Well,
just putting the thought out.
What's the mission statement of the facilities department?
Buildings. Buildings.
Yeah.
Everything, construction above ground. The DPW director handles the ground and under, and facilities handles the buildings, essentially. We have been working, or had been working on maybe trying to do something similar to what we did for facilities for open space, and that's still a work in progress.
I think the answer was no.
I think a lot of trees are on sites that don't have buildings.
Yeah. We've heard for about 3 or 4 years now about how we're losing trees in the town because it seems to, when we're going to fall through the cracks or just not enough people available. It's kind of a shame to, create an entity, spend money to create it, and then allow them to die.
I assume the manager will hear all about this.
I'm sure he will.
Can I just add that there is additional money in this year's DPW for trees, and we'll get more information when we present our budget.
Okay, is there any other questions on North Union? I have one minor suggestion.
Yes, please.
Got to put in the new Thompson School. Got the old one there.
Talk to Google. Yes. You're right. You are right. We need to update that.
Okay.
I cropped out the Dunkin' Donuts ad that they had in there when I took the screenshots.
Okay. Okay, 7, study of Spy
Spy
Pond
Pond
field bleachers.
Yes. So the bleachers, is another one of these projects like the old burying ground where the town knows that we have to do something because there are safety and structural problems. The DPW has engaged a structural engineering consultant a few years back. As you can see, the cost estimates are considerable in the range, and from 468K up to 840, and that's before you talk about making the facility ADA compliant. Should the town decide to restore the facility and preserve it, and I think wisely the DPW, which is responsible for the maintenance, thought that it would be a good idea to seek CPA dollars, which can be used for planning purposes for historic preservation and/or recreational use, to really just get a sense for what the options are, what the need is, what the community wants to do. So they proposed what we felt was a well-considered and appropriately scoped study. The one change we required and requested them to make was to add another public meeting. So there will be 3 public meetings. We heard a lot from the community as well on this one. I think the neighbors there are very invested in what happens to those bleachers. Some of them actually would like to see them removed. There may be other views out there. And again, this is where the CPA committee our role is not to decide what happens to the bleachers. It's, in this case, is to decide whether this is an appropriate use of CPA funds to do the study. We like studies because and I think the town's fiscal planning bodies do, if they're done right, because that helps us make smart decisions with whatever money gets spent later. So there'd be 3 public meetings. They would be a review of the study, the structural studies that have done before, and I think a robust discussion that would involve the school recreation department and school department rather, and the recreation department about the needs of the field and what the future of that field is and how that affects the stadium. The stadium is old, and the historical commission is willing to be involved in this and helping as part of the study and moving forward to ensure that if the bleachers are taken down, if they're demolished, that appropriate measures would be taken to preserve the historical elements. And they're looking at the archway in particular. And all that would have to be determined. That's what the study is for. But just I think that's important to say that the history associated with this is very much in view, and I think will be an important part of this study if it happens.
So the 53,000 is primarily a study. There's
It is entirely study.
Study.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? Just to let you know that if you decide to take down that building right to the right of the bleachers, you'll probably have a former treasurer come back from the grave to fight you. So, any other questions?
What's the story behind that?
Many years ago, the town manager decided that the building, I'm not quite sure what's in it, but
You've been in it, haven't you?
The locker.
Locker
room type
yeah.
area.
So he decided that was going to be torn down, and it created a major political fight. Mr. Biller, the town treasurer at the time, fought him tooth and nail.
Wow.
That was to be preserved. So
Wow.
just a little bit of history.
Well, his daughter's still around here,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any questions on the bleachers? Now, are they being used? Are they roped off? Or
Yes, both.
I think they
They
typically
are.
rope them off, especially on town night.
Yeah.
yeah.
Excuse me, they were full on town night. I watched the fireworks.
Well, this is the problem. you
They
can
shouldn't
take
be.
them off. I
I
mean,
didn't cross the line.
yeah, take
They
them
do.
off, but yeah,
They shouldn't be used, but
Yeah.
they are.
And that's probably the one night a year that they are full.
yeah.
I think that generally for the sporting events, most folks
Bring their own
seek out
chairs.
that
Yeah.
shade line near the
Yeah.
vegetated bike path there. Bring their own chairs.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, and the last project is the Winslow Towers building envelope repair.
Yes. So Winslow Towers is the housing authority's property across, well, more or less across from Whittemore Park, actually. It's the 13-story tower, and this is you might recall that the Housing Authority received some funding from us in our first year, mostly? For Drake Village for similar work. So CPA funds you have to use them carefully for the state laws categories, but they can be used to preserve a affordable housing building. So to keep the building as an affordable housing asset, that's okay. We couldn't do much for renovating the inside to make it nicer, but we can address water infiltration and other envelope issues. And so in Drake Village, we did that, and John actually used the CPA funding with, I think, some CDBG funding as the local match and got a 3-to-1 state match for the rest of the project, which is, as I said before, that's when CPA is the most powerful, when it directly enables those kind of leveraged funds. The same plan is in place here. This time the Housing Authority is putting up $550,000 of its own operating reserves as a match. So they said, we will do that if the town of Arlington, the town meeting, appropriates $500,000 in CPA funding. They'll take that $1,050,000 and go to the state and seek matching funds for as high a ratio as they can to finish this, because and they will use the $1 million that's represented here to do a large chunk of the windows, but they're, as you can see, the project is 4 times this big. So that's where the state matching funds would come in from DHCD.
Any questions? Grant?
What is that building built?
Somebody else asked.
67.
We determined it was very late 60s.
Yeah, 69 maybe?
Yeah, quote me on that, but that did come up at a prior meeting.
Yeah, it did. Should.
So this is primarily to repair outside areas and window replacement?
Yeah, water infiltration,
Okay.
sealant, and some asbestos remediation in the window casings, which was discovered when they did the big study that spec it out.
Okay. Oh, Annie.
When John came to you for this project, was he able to tell you what he's got in his operating reserve and what the restrictions are on its use?
You mean the total amount in the operating reserve?
Yeah, in other words, because I know he has had trouble in the past, like he has to get permission somehow to use his operating reserve for these kinds of projects. And he's often claimed that he's too hampered, and that's why he asks for CDBG money and so on and so forth. And I just wondered whether he was able to give you the big picture when he asked for this money.
He's not. And, yeah.
Said that that's what their contribution would be from,
Right.
their own dollars.
Right. And, we did not have another housing application this year, and I think the committee, again, taking our lead from input from the community, always prioritizes affordable housing, so this seemed like a good use, for the funds. Yeah, thank
Give you
you.
the big picture, okay? Because he's required essentially by the feds, to put a certain amount of money into that operating reserve. And then there's some rules about how they can use it and how much they continue to have and so on and so forth. And it'd be good for you to understand that picture before just assuming that the $500,000 is necessary to leverage the rest.
Would you be concerned that money might not be available or just not needed?
I'd be concerned about knowing for sure, because I'm willing to bet you that reserve is fairly large. And so the question is he really restricted in using it, or could he have used more of his own money to do this, given that it's, a housing authority property, basically.
They do have a designee on the committee, Richard Murray, so.
Yeah, Richard would know.
chase that out.
Richie would know.
He would absolutely know.
Absolutely.
Okay. Annie, you were
Just an
talking about
FYI.
this project?
The Winslow Towers project, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this, Alan?
No, just a more general question.
Okay, any more on the Winslow Towers? Because I have a general question too. Okay, Alan?
Okay, so I was just going back to the spreadsheet, the $2,374,458 number. That looks like that's this year's surcharge plus a 12% state match plus the fund balance. Does that mean that the entire $2,374,458 is appropriated? That the fund balance is zero then, that takes it to zero. And I know there's a bill going through the State House to and the literature comes with it says that if the bill doesn't pass, that this year's match would probably be single digits.
I think that's the following years.
Yeah, this year they say.
Well, it says 2019.
Approaching single digits this year.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And then after following fiscal year 20, it gets dire.
Okay, so you really aren't necessarily even guaranteed the 2, 3, 7, 4, 4, 5, 8 might be somewhat less. Than
the 12% state match is the Department of Revenue makes a projection into all CPA communities and says this is a safe amount for you to assume. So they do the math based on who's going to be eligible for a match in this fiscal year. So we budget conservatively in general, but this is a very conservative figure. In fact, other years our revenue has actually exceeded our estimates, both in the state match, particularly in local collections. We underestimate on local collections on purpose, and so part of the fund balance comes from turnbacks from that year. So the DOR tells us the 12% state match. They're comfortable with our planning for that, for these purposes, and the fiscal reality of the shares of the pie getting cut up smaller and smaller with the pie not making that's in future years.
Right.
That's the
Well,
reality.
we sort of all do with the CPA match fund.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's the
approach
reality for all
zero,
CPA
that's part of
communities.
the argument.
Yeah.
And the 1,458,403 is the anticipated collection in
projected
FY20.
right.
There's an article in the warrant that will allow an exemption for seniors from the CPA surcharge, which wouldn't surprise me if it passed. Do you have any idea what the impact would be of that?
Have we run the numbers on that yet?
Yeah,
because we don't know the
haven't
specifics.
charted it out.
Yeah, we have not charted it out. I think it will come down. The devil will be in the details. What those numbers look like. So yeah, we don't know. I think that would obviously affect our. That would affect. I don't know if that. I don't know enough about that article yet. It's actually being heard Monday with us. So I don't know if that would affect the fiscal year 20 or future fiscal years.
I think it'll be 20, but so if you're projecting the local collection very conservatively, then we're probably okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the 2, 3, 7, 4, 4, 5, 8. I just wonder if there's a possibility that you wouldn't get that much, and maybe that's.
Yeah.
When we take a vote, we could do say no more than 2, 3, 7, 4, 4, 5, 8, but that might be too high.
The issue I think appropriately came up, and it came up in the Capital Planning Committee, and actually the town controller opined on her over own volition that she's familiar with, and she works with Amy Fidalgo in her office with our budget estimation, and she was very comfortable with this, even though it looks like it's a close shave, just because of the multiple points at which we make conservative estimates for the revenue, particularly in the collections and on state match end. But yeah, it is an ambitious budget that I think we're.
Is this the first time you've appropriated down to zero? Seems like
Yes.
there's always been a surplus.
There's always been much more available than we had requests for, and this year it flipped. We had more project. We had much more than this requested. We had close to $3 million requested this year. So.
Well, the 1,458,403, that'd be being collected this year. It says fiscal 19 projected revenue.
That explains where the figure came from. So it's as everybody, as we all do, it's based on that's a projection of FY20 revenue, but the figure comes from looking at fiscal 19's projected revenue.
Okay, yeah.
And adding
I was
2.5%
reading
to
FY20
that.
over on the left.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Not the 20.
right.
Okay, got it.
So you take the money in one year and spend it the next.
We
If I remember correctly.
No, we're town meeting appropriate CPA funds on a combination, mostly of anticipated revenues that come in fiscal year 20, plus any plus anything you have in the bank, any reserves or anything in the fund.
So there's an anomaly.
This is FY19 projected plus 2.
Yes, one year is
So it's really
let's put it, one year we did spend the prior years. We weren't allowed to spend the first year, so we had 2 years at one point. So yeah, but this is an explanation of where the estimate came from and not what that line item really is.
So this is the first year you're really.
This is the
kinda close
first
to
year
the
it's that
bottom,
close,
so,
yeah.
Okay.
I would think even if that needed special legislation, if I remember correctly, the CPA that are, which means it wouldn't even get filed
To
until.
21.
So I don't think that's an
Yeah,
immediate issue.
right, for 20, yeah, that's good to know.
Okay, so Charlie?
Just for the record, the Winslow Towers was built in 1971.
Excellent. You're close.
Okay, I just have two questions for you. Number one, in the past, you've set aside money for the housing project off Park Ave in the Heights.
Mhm.
And that's still a vacant lot. Could you tell us what the status of that is?
Yeah, Jim's been.
So it was actually just, I don't know how many days ago when the announcement will be made public. I think a little over for a week from today, but the Housing Corporation of Arlington just secured the state funding to complete the project and move it forward. So
Okay.
their previous round or application for funding proved unsuccessful, but they will soon be able to begin advancing that project.
Okay.
And we did not, the town did not give them the CPA funds for that. You know, the funds are appropriated, but they're still in the town's.
Yeah.
You know,
They're still in your bank
they're
account.
still in our bank account.
Yeah.
Because and that, again, just to protect the town, we don't give an outside entity any money until they're ready to roll. And in this case, the condition was that they had their financing package assembled. So yeah, they didn't get it the first round, but we now got the good news today.
Okay. Now, just going back to the final page, just so I understand this correctly. You're 125,416 in deficit. You're hoping or expecting 100,000 from community development block grant money.
That's our conservative estimate.
Yeah, we're thinking.
You're hoping-
We're expecting
Okay.
significantly more than that.
So if that money comes in, that gets subtracted from the 325.
Correct.
Okay. If it doesn't come in, then you have to reduce the Whittemore Park.
That's right.
Okay. If you reduce that by 125,000, doesn't that put a significant deficit into that project?
They prepared two separate concepts, one for approximately $412,000 and one for $540,000.
Okay.
The elements that could be completed later. But we're confident that the offset that we get from CDBG is going to allow all projects to be funded in full.
Okay, that sounds good. Are there any other questions on any of this? Like I said in the past, I think the wording of our warrant article is that the Finance Committee supports the recommendations of the Community Preservation Committee. So that's sort of what we're looking at, unless you want to do something different. Any other questions? Gentlemen, ma'am, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your interest in the work that we do. It's very much appreciated, and your questions are valuable. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Okay, are there any budgets to do?
You could do the library.
Okay, that sounds good.
My favorite.
Okay, can everybody pull out their budget book and
It's on, what page is it?
133. Page 133.
All right, so, I'll try to go through it fairly quickly, just on what I think might, be questions.
Mary Margaret?
Yes?
I can't hear you.
All right, I'll talk louder. All right, so the salaries and wages line item, it's on the first one, that increase is due to contractual agreements with the Library Association. With the town and the library. So that's the only thing I want to say in library salaries. In library expenses, the reason that the maintenance line went down is now the facilities department does a lot of that work. On line item, other contracted services, line item 5236, that's the Minuteman fees for being part of that network.
I'm sorry, that's other contracted services?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the Minuteman.
That's the Minuteman Network membership.
So it went up?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see, what else do I want to say about this? I mean, there was not a lot of change in the staffing, so. And I asked about the few on the top, and like she said, it's mostly because of contractual agreements, people moving, changing jobs, and becoming more senior. Right, that's pretty much it. And if people wanted to know, we do have 22 pages that work in the library, and they get paid $11 an hour.
Isn't it below minimum wage?
No.
No? It's a so-called town minimum wage.
Right, so basically, what we talked about with Andrea was the kinds of changes that are being done in the library, the no fines. They've determined that actually usage goes up if there's no fines, and that the amount of fines that they collected was not a significant amount of money anyway, so because they're getting more usage, they've decided that works. There's a lot of things that are going to go on for the capital planning that are already been discussed with Charlie. There's a lot of new restoration that will be going on in the Fox and in the current building in the Arlington Center. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? They've already started some of it. They have to meet new building codes. That's a lot of, that's taking up some of the renovations. Let's see, what else are they doing? And basically they're doing a lot more programs, and they're applying for a grant to do some of the work in the Fox Library. So, I don't know, I do want to say they do a lot of projects that are very inclusive in community building in this town. This is what is going to be Arlington Reads, is the book Refugee, and all the programs with that. This library is number 6 in the state for circulation. They have over 1,000 people a day going into the library. It's very well used. So, I think that's about all. Do you have more to say,
Well,
John?
I would just say that we met with Andrea today, and I'm consistently impressed with the people we have in this town who work in this town. She is a marvelous asset for the town. She absolutely loves the library. You just tell how much she enjoys working there, and is thinking in forward fashion about how to do new things, doing the stuff with the capital plan. And in addition, you'll see that in the warrant, there's a warrant article to actually get rid of some prints that are sort of not worth very much and decreasing in value as years go by. Over the last 10 years or so, this collection of prints that were apparently done by somebody in the Robbins family, I think. One of the...
No, they bought them.
He bought them over the years. It's just a kind of a mishmash of things that are not very valuable. So she's going to get rid of them. So
no historic significance for Massachusetts, for Arlington, for the United States. There are a lot of the prints were done in Europe.
So anyway,
so they've been assessed.
We have this
that's
facility,
what that
and
warrant article is
looking
about.
after it beautifully, in my opinion. I was very impressed.
Okay, questions, Dean?
So, I think I've asked this before. I have no idea what it means to have a certified versus a decertified library. I've come to appreciate that it's like important.
Yeah.
And that I always seem to ask if the combination of this budget And the capital plan keeps us to have this mystically certified library, which, again,
Yeah.
I don't know what it means, but I believe it's important.
Right, it has to do with making sure that the library's budget is in step with the rest of the town, that it's getting as much attention or the same rate of increases as the rest of the town budget. Because one year it did not, and they threatened to take away the certification. But that hasn't happened in a long time.
Okay.
So yes, so it's all certified.
And certification is what allows us to participate in the Minuteman network. So the biggest loss would be losing the Minuteman network, where you can borrow from every library in this half of the state.
Christine?
The sale of the art prints are, two questions. Are they expecting to do it by an auction?
Well, they're working with the Attorney General, because some of the problem is, there's a grant to keep up the collection, but they can't keep it up anymore, and it's of no significance, it doesn't have a lot of value, so they're trying to work through being able to keep the grant, but not have to take care of the prints in some way to give them to someone else who might want
So
them.
then how are they going, assuming they do that, how are they selling them? How are they going to,
That I don't know.
and do you know where the proceeds of that sale would go? Would it go into the general fund or would it go into the library?
It would, for whatever the grant it is for the library manages its own grants, like the children's, there are trustees, that's why there are trustees for the library, and they manage those grants.
Charlie?
So I'm not sure how to read this, but it looks to me like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, there's half a dozen or so, maybe more, new personnel.
They're not really new, they're people whose jobs have changed. So Barry is now full-time, and Barry is replacing Alexander.
But aren't Cania and Priver and Gilbert new?
I didn't ask who was new and who was old.
Oh, just looking at
It's more
the-
that some people left, and the existing people moved
Well,
into newer jobs.
The only question that I'm asking is, have we looked at whether or not they're coming in at the bottom of the, we had this discussion a couple of
Right.
months ago about
But they're not new people.
But there are new people.
Well, no, some of them had part-time jobs and are now full-time. Some of them are replacing people who have left, but they've been here. They just moved into that job, so they may get paid more because they have a more senior position. And some of them were part-time, and now they're full-time. If it helps, I can go back and ask her for every single one, but we did ask for, in general, for her to explain. And this is what she said.
I'm just raising the question, if we have a policy where we want to find out if people are coming, if we're maintaining the
Right.
integrity of the pay plan,
Mhm.
right? And there's a fair number of position changes here.
Right.
Are we maintaining the integrity of the pay plan? That's really what I'm asking.
Well, the people who are already here will keep their same pay, except that the ones that then got a promotion or are now went from working part-time to working full-time.
I don't think we know that for sure, Charlie, so maybe it would be a
Well,
good
I
idea if
think
we,
we asked that question. I mean-
if they're coming in at the bottom of the range, for instance.
But look, some of these people were already here, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know,
So
but
they just took.
they move up to another position, right?
Yeah.
Higher position, so the question is, do they come in at the bottom of that range for the higher position?
My question is actually directed towards the new people. As I see it here, there are at least 4, maybe 5 new people. So,
I need
okay,
to
well,
say. I will ask her, but the impression I got today was these people already existed. They're not new people, they're just moving into new positions.
I think the thing that Carolyn was focusing on that got us to change position where there's a vacant, it actually says vacancy.
Right.
and they're starting to, they're putting in a salary that's max.
Okay, but there are, I'm just looking at the list here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who left.
Or got promoted.
No, they're
Right.
not up,
Didn't count.
they're not further up in the list that I can see.
Well, Barry is,
I didn't count Barry.
okay.
I'm looking at the other people.
One full-time, 2 part-time, 1 full-time.
Perhaps what you could do is, and we don't have to hold up the budget for this, but if you could go back and just ask, when somebody changes a position, what step do you start them at? I think it might even be contract, that
Yes.
if you're going from you're going from a grade 4 to a grade 5, your step has to go at the same. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to find out about.
All right, I will
new
ask
people.
about each one, but in general, what she said was they moved up into and took different positions that paid more, that most of the increases were due to contractual agreements, and that the salary table had been renegotiated.
If perhaps you could ask if they came in the last 6 months or so, where did they start? What policy did she decide, and what step they started at in that grade?
Okay.
'Cause I think that's what Charlie was asking. I got a question, and you've probably answered this before, and I've just forgotten from last year. Friends of the Fox offsets. How do they? Is this primarily money they get from the store in the basement?
Yes.
It's gone now.
So,
Well,
over?
it might be, because they're gonna have to, they're gonna renovate parts of the Fox too. But right now, it's still, as far as I know, it's
it's a little, yeah, I had the same question. So, the Little Fox sale the store's been closed since October. There's been some disagreement between the store managers and
Right.
people
Right.
running it, and I think there's going to be a decision in the next couple weeks about who's going to get to run it. But I think they're without at least 4 or 5, 6 months of revenue. So I wondered if
The
that.
Friends of the Fox is the group that contributes money, that has the events that will bring them money. And so that's just a small part of it.
So they don't think this like predicted $25,000. Even though they lost all that Little Fox store revenue, they don't think that's they still think that's good.
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, it has been in the past, the Friends of the Fox have continued to produce revenue for them.
Is it open now?
No.
No.
The little store is, but that's not all that the
No, the
Friends
little
of the
store's
Fox.
closed.
Right. I mean, that's what I meant to say, but the Friends of the Fox continue on. The Friends of the Fox weren't just the store.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the library?
I had another question, which is maybe not a typical question because they're within their budget. But I wondered what were the things that programs they wanted to do, or funds they wanted to spend, or people they wanted to hire, that they said to themselves, the finance committee would never go for this, and if we had more budget, this is what we'd do. Do you have any idea of what activities maybe they think they could be doing that funds aren't allowing them because they don't think it would ever be approved?
I don't know, I think they're doing an awful lot of activities. I mean, that community room is used all the time. They have a lot of grant-funded programs that keep operating. I think they do all kinds of activities. Part of what the capital planning objectives are to make like the fiction room into the teen room, because there's a greater need for that. I mean, Andrea and her management team are working on a lot of different things. There are programs at that library every night.
Yeah.
And there are ongoing programs, and there's the Arlington Reads.
Send these guys around.
So I think that she tries to make sure that every age group and cultural group and community group has a program going on and has access to the library all the time, and it's open a lot. She even has a program for reluctant readers that you would read to your dog that take place at the library, which there's been a lot of stories about that, how that's actually helping kids read. They read to their dogs.
If they had more money, would the library be open more hours or not closed in the summer, or?
Probably, but they're open. I mean, they get enough money. They've gotten money from different fundraising things, because there's the Friends of the Library in general, not just the Fox, or the trustees, and they have a lot of grant programs. And by getting rid of some of the prints and making sure that they can have access to that grant money, they will have more money for things to do. But yeah, they're always planning more things and more equipment.
Okay, any other questions? Right.
Let's ask again, are municipal employees exempt from minimum wage laws? Because the Massachusetts minimum wage is $12.
She was saying that they're doing it on a fiscal year rather than calendar year. Is that what she said? And so, whatever it is will happen, but it happens
In July.
yeah, instead of January.
Okay, I just want to make sure they're not underestimating their,
No, I
Don't think
okay.
didn't.
Maybe if you ask her, could you just double check that?
I
'Cause
asked her this morning how much
FY
they got
2020
paid.
will all be $12 an hour. No,
Well,
in Massachusetts.
Right, but right now they get paid 11. Right.
Yeah, but starting in January 1st, it was 12, I hope, unless there's an exception. Maybe you could just check that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure these numbers are,
Okay, well, that's what we asked her
Compliant
this
with-
morning.
with $12
I will
an
ask
hour.
her why it's not 12 and 11 is what she said.
Are there any other questions?
Doesn't it, I think it progresses to 12 over some few years, doesn't it?
well, it's progressive to 15, it's 12
Right,
January.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So she's doing
I
it
have
on the
to, I have to
fiscal
pay
year.
people, so I know these things.
Right, so that's why in July it will happen. But I will ask her
Up to 12
again.
now.
No, it's January 1st it has to happen.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to move ahead with this, or do you want to wait for the answers to the questions to come back? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for 2 million, I'm assuming you're recommending
Yes.
as printed.
I am,
Yes.
sorry.
Okay, moved and seconded for 2,496,798. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, favorable action on 220.
All right, I'll ask her again about the pages, what the pages are getting paid. And I'll ask about every single person who moved around.
Well, I think, as people came in from outside of the library. In other words, if they're
Right.
if they're brand new,
Yeah.
did they start at step 1 or entry? If not, why not? If she says I can't hire them for that level, we're not out to second guess them. but
Yeah, I was looking at
one-
last year's budget book, there are 2 or 3 who are brand new.
Yeah, so those are the ones we're more interested in. Okay, before.
I was going to say, do you want to talk about the 2 warrant articles? Actually, I just wanted to say that the one warrant article from Andrew Fisher about making the free parking in the library was not part of the library. The library did not put that warrant article in.
Okay, what?
They only put in the one about the deaccession of the prints.
Here it is, Article 40, vote Robbins Library parking costs.
Yeah, they don't know, they had nothing to do with it. The library had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, she didn't think it's a red hot idea.
She actually said there's more turnover now that
Right.
you have to pay for parking.
Yeah, sure, go ahead, not to hear
Yeah.
that.
Okay, and what was the other library article?
the one above it, about the de-accession of
Selling
the
those
prints, but being able to keep some of the grant money. So they're working through that with the Attorney General.
Okay. But those are, you know, basically selectmen articles we decided, so
Right.
they could handle.
He asked.
What I would like to do now is go back to the CPA. So we could, you know, we could look at the budget. Dean?
Well, I'll wait till you're done.
Okay. So, what we're looking to do is, obviously, is 125,416 deficit. So whatever money they get from community development block grant money will reduce to 325 for that, to balance that out. And then if they don't get that money, it'll come out of the Whittemore Park revitalization. So they've assured us there'll be a zero deficit at the end of the year. Last year, the motion we took, give me a sec. Here it is. Appropriation Community Preservation Act. Last year, the vote that we took was that the Finance Committee supports all the projects recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. So, you know, we didn't get into dollars and stuff like that. So that's what we did last year. So with that, Dean?
Dean?
Yeah, so I'd like to make two motions. The first one is that the Finance Committee supports the CPA funding plan of the committee, which we recognize to be exactly as the chair said. And then the second motion I'd like to make is that we empower the chair and the vice chair to actually sort out the exact numbers from this in the book when we finally have it nailed down in like April 1st.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Chair.
They didn't say anything about when they would get that resolved.
Well, they said that their meeting, their finalized meeting is on March 25th. So if something drastic happens, we're meeting after that.
Well, my thinking behind it, I should have expounded just a bit, is my expectation is that the currently seated select board will take up and approve a CDBG funding plan before the April election. I don't think,
Yes.
I can't remember a time they've ever let it go to a newly seated select board. And so the thought is, we know it's gonna be A or B, and so my recommendation is we support the plan, which we know it's gonna be, with a minor change. And then the second recommendation is that Alan and Al will just, whichever one it is, they will drop it in to the Finance Committee recommendation. And I can't imagine the current select board punting on this. Doesn't seem
The select
controversial.
board doesn't have control of CDBG.
Yes, they do.
Who does?
They don't support.
Well, it's a decision of town meeting. The full recommendation with all the numbers and everything is a recommendation of the Community Preservation Act to the town meeting.
Right.
So the position of the Capital Budget Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Board of Selectmen is usually, we support these recommendations, if we do. If we wanted to change them, if we didn't support them and we wanted to change them, we'd have to prepare a substitute motion. Alan?
Right, but we don't have this number in
No,
our
we don't.
report, so.
In other words,
we don't need to, we don't have the number, we just say endorse theirs. Unless we want to
That's
put
what
in
I'm
a
saying,
different
that's why I
number.
say a specific number.
Yeah,
But we don't have a specific number.
the
And
Finance Committee doesn't list a
Support a
number.
number.
it's not in the big table, because it's not, well, is it appropriate? No, it's not appropriate.
Yeah, not appropriate.
Okay, Charlie?
Yeah, I disagree with which was your motion about the number? Was it the first one or the second?
Second one.
Second. So I disagree with the second motion because the CPA committee reports directly to town meeting. They don't report to the finance committee. So
That's
it's not a
correct.
finance committee vote
Right,
per se.
this is all we say.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
say we endorse it, there's no number.
Right.
Right.
And if they go before town meeting with a deficit proposal, we can move against it then, or take whatever action we want on the floor of town meeting. But I don't think we should try to usurp their
And they would.
budgeting position.
They won't propose a deficit.
No, I'm not saying it's going to endorse it.
Okay.
And can I just bring one quick thing? This town meeting does not control the CDBG money. Town meeting endorses the CDBG grant, which is an off-budget account completely controlled by the select board. So when we say this, we can pretend that this isn't gonna, there's a possibility the
Okay,
select board.
are you mixing up two different things? The community development block grant versus the CPA?
So the CDBG is where they're gonna get the 125 from.
Right.
That does not need approval of town meeting.
No, that's a select.
No, what they
board
would do is
decision.
then, is reduce the appropriation of this project by that amount of money, therefore zeroing out the deficit.
Right, so what I'm saying is when we put it to, when this goes to, by April 1st, we're gonna have everything clear.
Right.
There's no contingency, like town meeting can vote against the CDBG grant, doesn't matter. It still gets filed
That's
as
right.
is.
And I anticipate that since the Community Development Block Grant Committee's final meeting is on the March 25th, that they will have the selectmen's vote before that, and this will all be zeroed out. So, Liz, can you put on your calendar on the Friday, the 26th, I think it is, to call Eric and ask him just to send you a copy of their final vote, or their final, this page? Just so we see the final, the final numbers. But I really don't think, we don't need the second motion because we don't put the dollar figure in anyway.
I'll withdraw the second.
Okay. Okay, so your motion is the Finance Committee supports the CPA recommendations.
But not the provisional, the final one.
The final
We're not endorsing this one with a deficit.
Right.
not The one they'll present at town meeting.
If it comes out on the 25th that they vote something that has a deficit, which I cannot imagine that they would do, then, we can take, that will be reported back to us on one of those final 2 days, and we can take whatever action, we deem appropriate. But they said they're not gonna have a deficit, so. Alan?
Right, and actually, the exact wording from last year was the Finance Committee supports all the projects recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. It doesn't necessarily support the appropriations or anything, just we support all the projects. It's sort of saying, yeah, we agree this is a good list of projects.
So I'd use that same recommendation. Okay, is there any other discussion? Peter?
I'm very distressed at the Whittemore Park presentation and answers to questions and so forth. So I won't vote to support all 8 of the parts of the project.
Okay, is your Grant?
I was thinking similar, Peter, but then I was thinking that they kind of bundled it that way so they could qualify for the CPA funds. They put something phase 1.
They claimed they weren't responsible for the content of it. They were just sort of just funding.
Right,
I'm not following what.
right. Because they could, they can't do phases 2 or 3, but you still can object to it.
They're not a design body, they're a funding body.
Right.
Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded that the Finance Committee supports all of the projects recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All those in... Hey, that's right. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Yeah, in favor.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Opposed?
So what's the count?
12-1. Okay, favorable action passed. Okay. Does anybody have any additional budgets?
Get down, back.
Heard him first.
Should be quick, although with this group, you never know.
What do you say?
That's shielding or what?
130.
Page,
130.
okay,
That's the big item.
Their budget is basically level funded. The only, I'm just noticing, I'm drawing a blank, is under inspection expenses. The 5382 line item, contracted services, going up by 4,000. I apologize, I don't know why. But that's an issue I can ask. Other than that, they do have one issue which doesn't affect their budget. Apparently, they're getting inundated by public records requests, and I guess a lot of the requests are extremely detailed, wanting to get pull every record on particular properties.
Do they happen to come from one particular person?
They seem to come from a particular group.
Okay.
Apparently, one person flies a drone over construction sites, hoping to spot violations. So they've been working with Adam to add a public records person. They actually pulled up they went and got permit, the original permit for my house in 1929. Because I think prior to 1992, everything was still in paper. And it was quite a process. It took about 20 minutes to pull that one permit. And
from what year?
1929.
For your house?
Yeah.
Why do you want that?
I wanted it.
Oh, you want
We
it?
use it.
You
No, we
want
use it as a
Example.
just as basically an example
Okay.
of what it took to pull a record.
Not taking the coal bin out?
Just about. We actually had to go into the anteroom of the ladies' room, which was a little bizarre. Suffice it to say, they have a lot of paper records, and apparently, under a prior chief inspector, the decision was made to file those records by year,
Great.
which obviously makes it very difficult if you're searching for all the records on a piece of property. You have to go year by year by year, as opposed to going to one address. So they're working with Adam to get a position for public records specialist, and apparently this will be budget neutral, but they haven't gotten clarity yet.
Are they going to refile or scan? I mean, are they going to?
Well, I was actually going to ask this group if that's because the other problem they're going to have is they're going to be moving, and that space is going to be smaller, and so that problem's just going to get worse. So you're right. The ultimate solution is to scan, digitize, whatever you want to call it, the existing paper records. That's obviously a pretty substantial project.
By address.
Summer intern.
Well, they have to contract with somebody to do it. I don't know what equipment they have, if they even have scanners and stuff like that. So that's something we can ask them to look at. Is this something we can ask them, say, to submit a capital request, or can we do that? Do we do that?
I think that question was to you.
The scanning of town records can be a capital project. The town, for whatever reason, hasn't quite figured out how to do that. The basement of the town hall is probably eyeball high with records that are supposed to have been scanned by law. I mean, they're at risk of deteriorating, and the capital planning committee has had budget items in there over the last 10 or 15 years for various amounts of money to do that scanning. That's never gotten done that I know of.
The problem is not the scanning. The problem is the tagging and document storage. like how are you then gonna store those and make them searchable? So the problem is we don't, at least when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we did not have a good document storage system that would make retrieval easy. So that would be the real question to ask, is are
Well,
they
they've
figured
done
that
that.
out yet?
They've done it,
Uh-huh.
back to 1992.
Well,
presumably they
back to
should-
1992, or have they been keeping electronic records since 1992? And then the question is, how are they filed, and are they doing it consistently and across departments and ta-da? So, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah,
more
I
than just,
And by year.
there's a lot more than just permits done by address, but
Yeah.
the inspections department, like, you can look up your bill, and you can also look up permits against your property online. Those are systems that were built independently to just do that, right? So for them, that might not be a problem, but all those documents down in the basement of Town Hall, just depends on what they pertain to, and how do you want to tag them? So,
Yeah, I'm not going that global.
yeah,
Just
no, I
focus on
understand, but I
inspections.
think that may be part of what freezes people up when they
Yeah.
say, oh, we should scan all this stuff. It's not just scanning.
Well, yeah,
It's categorizing
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and cross-categorizing
Yeah.
and storing it in a
Yeah,
system that
having-
allows for
having
retrieval,
index.
so.
Yeah.
And not
Sure.
doing
Okay,
by
Charlie?
address.
Yeah,
I
for
think-
them, it's by
I
address.
think that was a good, good point to make 10 years ago or more.
I agree, I'm just saying, I don't know if they have the
Every
system.
city and town in the country
Yeah.
has digitized all of these records
Yeah.
of different types, municipal records. And
Yeah.
so the knowledge,
Yeah.
the community knowledge about how to tag them and code them is widespread.
Absolutely, I'm not saying that we don't know how to do it. I'm saying that at least when I was involved in the discussions, there were other priorities that every time you talked about document storage, people would go, yeah, later. Not that we didn't understand the technology or whatever, so.
So just.
I'm saying there's a
focused on
different question to
inspections.
ask.
They already have a significant problem. Apparently,
Yeah.
dealing with these records requests is almost an all hands on deck kind
Yeah.
of thing. And it's only gonna get worse when they move into a smaller facility. So I know we
Well-
can't make the decision for them, but is there anything we can do to encourage them to?
Well, I wonder if they could build it into the capital project, because they're also taking a big risk of losing those documents in the move. The chances that happening are about, 100%.
Wait till you see the number before you ask that.
For the project, or the number for this
For the
building?
DPW building I'm talking about.
Oh, I know what it is. Are you kidding?
So
$20
Dara,
million.
is the 4,000 under contractual services
Potentially that.
part of that issue?
I don't think so. I'm drawing a blank on what it is.
Looks like it replaces overtime.
There's
Yeah,
$4,000
there's a
reduction in
$4,000
overtime.
Yeah, I saw that,
Mhm.
and just wanted to make sure that wasn't just a coincidence.
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
you're right. I think that-
Okay.
They're hiring
So instead of
out.
spending overtime, they're contracting some service
I saw the
outside.
paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay, Grant?
Are we having, it's sort of a general question, but it might address this as well. Are we having Adam come back in again for another round of, in your head too, another round of questions?
If we need to.
Because there's actually a couple of items of risk that might, and this is it here. I recall some people trying to, getting aggravated with the town, let's say, trying to get public records. Filing suits against them and stuff. So this is sort of an area that looks like it needs to be addressed on a higher level than inspection services. But how it gets addressed could also affect inspection.
Unfortunately, we had the person who was responsible for that here in this room today. The assistant town manager, I believe, is the public information officer. And,
Oh, well, unfortunately, yes, but is that something we could address either with him and or Adam?
Oh, yeah.
And also another totally unrelated question for Adam that I was gonna ask him about email, but, if he's coming in again, I would do it.
so, let me just start a list. So the first thing, one thing we want to know about is tree watering. And the other we want to know is
Records.
record storage.
Records digitization.
Yeah.
Right. Something about it.
Electronic
Computerization.
documents would be the way to put it.
I have questions for the.
Okay, David.
I just want to go back. what you mentioned about concern with the inspection and the records, that's being addressed every day. By the town manager, along with the building inspector, and anybody else that's involved in the request for these records. It's an ongoing thing.
Well, and it's hard, it's like a needle, right, and it's hard to do, hard to accommodate, because
Right.
the records aren't very well kept, or they're kept by year,
Right.
you know, there's stuff like that, so. I'm sure they're working hard, but
And it's being addressed also in the legal department.
Well, when you say being addressed, is it being addressed, or are they just scurrying?
I think it's more the scary.
It's being addressed.
Hey, I mean, has anybody heard of any other area where, obviously, people going after building permit records is one area that, and going back that far, I haven't heard of any backlogs,
Emails.
you know, in other places.
Emails.
I'm sorry?
In the past, we have had public records requests for email conversations pertinent to some complaint, and it takes a long time to figure that out.
Or they file suit?
Or they file suit.
Yeah.
Or they complain to the
Name a couple
Attorney
of
General's
people.
office.
So the process, the place is, you know, the process has a system to
Yeah.
deal with all that. Well, let's get back on inspections.
I mean, unfortunately, the public records are governed by state law, and there's not
Yep.
much you can do.
You've got to provide them.
That's required.
Okay,
Fulfill the requirement.
so Darryl, what is your motion
Oh,
on?
I had a question.
Uh,
Oh, sorry. is
Well,
there-
let
was
me
there
just
more?
get the motion on the table.
Oh.
I move that we approve the fiscal 20 request of $520,104.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had two questions that aren't, where is inspectional services and where are they moving to?
Physically?
Yes,
They are Grove Street. What's the exact address? It's down,
Grove Street, at the
DPW
DPW building.
Right.
yeah.
And they're moving to,
I don't know where they're moving
Well, just they're redoing the building. So I think they're staying in Rose Street.
to. Are they staying in the building?
Part of the new, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they'll stay as part of that complex.
Yeah, because that facility is.
Right.
So it's a temporary move.
I think it's just moving from an old office to a new office.
Yeah, I think they'll move in.
But it sounds like it's gonna be smaller, which it should be, because they're gonna go electronic. You know,
Because otherwise, we're going to destroy history.
Okay,
and the second question was,
tall ceilings.
who sets the inspectional services department fees? It says there's $1,666,000 in plumbing permits, wiring permits. Who determines the fee
It's a profit center.
rate?
okay, Charlie?
So they're set by the town manager and the
Or selectmen.
and the inspections department.
Yeah.
But there's a state law that says the fees can't be higher than the cost
Right.
to provide the service. So they get estimated and then verified by the accountants, by the auditors, you know, over a multi-year period. So, you know, if you're gonna put up a 5-story building, they have a number of what it costs to do the inspections for a 5-story building. But in theory, those are not higher than the cost.
That's true for all fees in the municipality.
But the fact that the budget is less than the amount of fees collected implies that,
Well, it's possible.
Well,
I mean, the fees collected are 3x what the,
statistically, they have a number of what it costs, right? You can, and if there's suddenly 2 more permits in the year than they had last year, then there's an excess of revenues over costs. But, I mean, it can't be perfect. I'm just saying that that's the state law, and that's theoretically what's followed.
Well, and our department budgets aren't fully loaded, so employee health insurance, employee retirement costs, utilities,
That's all.
capital assets, cars, trucks, things like that are not included in the budget. So when you start
yeah.
weighing it all in, it comes closer to the fees.
Okay, any other questions on inspection? Okay, motion's been made and seconded for favorable action for 520-104. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
And then one more quick thing, there were questions when I did the police budget on the officers assigned to the FBI and the DEA. So I did ask Acting Chief Flaherty, and she did confirm that there are 2 officers assigned, one to each of those agencies. They sign an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, each year with both agencies, and they agree to pay for any overtime the officer works. And so the FBI reimburses the police department $18,300 per year. DEA reimbursement is about $16,000, and the police department does track those receipts. So.
And I stand corrected, I said I thought it went to the general fund, but it doesn't. It stays within the police budget for additional training in both those areas.
Okay, David, did you have a budget?
I have selectmen's budget.
Page 23.
25. Oh, that's election, I'm sorry. 23. If you notice on the selectmen's budget, there's not much change. The change are in salary, wages, and longevity. There is a $100 increase on line number 5217. That's student subscriptions. That's an increase. If you remember from last year, they had a reorganization within the selectmen's department, and that's leveled off now. So they have executive administrator and the 3 full-time employees. And they're presenting their budget at $284,034.
So your recommendation, 284,034?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Questions? Now, is that first page a compilation of?
I don't think so.
I see, okay. Questions?
Can I have 1 second?
Okay. All those in favor of the motion of 284,034? I'm sorry, Dean?
Oh, never mind, I got it. All right, forget it, sorry.
Not a problem. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? 2/2019. Okay, and then elections?
Elections. If you notice in election officers and poll workers' salaries, that's 5219. You notice last year was 60,969. This year it's zero. The reason being is that is now a change that's being carried in the salary and wages, which is above it. And that 60,000, that was based on early elections and all the elections that we had in 2018, which there won't be an early election in 2019.
And no,
So
no
for
state
20,
level.
fiscal 20, we'll just have,
It appears to be one election. Town election.
okay, Charlie?
No, 2.
No one override is in this
Is
fiscal.
that what you said?
Okay.
did I read or hear that the legislature and the governor are passing laws changing the election process to more days and other features like that that are going to increase the
Yes.
cost? When is that going to take effect?
Well, it's not etched in stone, but there's definitely going to be a change. It's in the works, and it appears that the next general election, the past general election, we had an early election for the general part, not for the primary. Next go around, there'll be an early election for the primary as well, but that won't be 10 days, that will be 5 days. Now there's also things being discussed about whether or not there's going to be an addition on a Saturday, longer hours, there's things like that that are still in the works. On a positive note, the state did return to the town of Arlington for the last elections that we've gone through, $30,481.33. I don't ever remember them that high. So that goes back to the general fund, the 30,000, and that was based upon the 10-day early election as well that we already went through, the general election.
So we're not going to have an additional election cost because of these rule changes?
Not in this budget,
Following year.
but it's coming, yes.
Thank you.
Is this where I rant about state mandates that are unfunded?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Is this
Sorry.
where I rant about state mandates that are unfunded?
Well, yeah. Right.
I know.
Yeah.
But I think the selectman's office and the clerks put in for reimbursements.
Yeah, but I, in the past, I remember there was one there was reimbursement for 10, another time there was reimbursement for 65. I don't know how that is all calculated through the state, I don't know. But this time it was 30,000.
So next year we have 2 elections. We'll have a town election and a presidential primary. Is that
True.
okay? And this last year, we had a town election, a primary, and a November election.
Yeah.
So we had 3.
What about the referenda?
It's in this year.
And we also had the early election as part of that.
Presidential.
That's 19, yeah.
And 19, what about 20?
No, I know, next year, 20,
Right.
fiscal 20.
The calendar.
There should be a primary, a presidential primary.
Is that before July 1st?
I'm sorry?
I'm trying to remember whether it's before or after July 1st.
I think it'll be
Presidential
before.
primaries.
It'll be before, I'm pretty sure.
Before July 1st of 20, yeah.
Yeah.
This budget assumes it's before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The presidential primary?
Yeah.
I think it's in March.
But is everybody
March
confused?
27th.
Everybody's confused all over the country because we've been talking about 2020 election since 2016. So we don't know when it's, we all get confused over it.
Yeah.
We think it might be tomorrow.
That'd be an early election. Boy, would New Hampshire be angry. Okay, so, David, are you recommending the amount of 18,726?
18,726.
Second?
Second.
Okay, is there any questions, discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? 2/20/19. In accordance with the Mary Ronan rule, any other business before the committee? Me? John?
I just wasn't sure what happened with the discussion about should the finance committee endorse scanning budgets for inspection services. I thought that was important, and I don't know if we're
Wait
gonna
a
come
minute,
back
I'm
to
sorry,
that.
could you repeat that? Should?
The inspectional services needs some scanning system, and there was some discussion of should the finance committee be encouraging inspectional services to apply for that budget, and then it was dropped. So I don't know what happened, because I think that's really
It's
important.
on Al's list to talk to Adam about.
Yeah, I've got,
Okay.
I usually try to talk to the manager regularly, and the issues that I saw coming up today was on tree watering and the fact that different departments in the town seem to have different policies. And the idea of the computer record computerization, and how's that moving along with the inspection specifically and with the
In general.
massive whatever in the basement. That's why I never go down there. So I try to keep it on a list so he knows. And sometimes he'll send a memo. If we need him, he'll come back. Okay, meeting adjourned.